On my desk and now on the bima is this book of poems, Strip of Land by Rabbi Hannah Yerushalmi, recently written and published in these last 11 months since the attacks of October 7th. And inside of this book are good poems and hopeful poems, sad poems and broken poems, dated and annotated to the moment that inspired them. The one on this page is written at the saving of the hostages, and the one on this one is written after weeping with the mother of a victim. They're written at milestones and markers that we thought once unthinkable: 30 days, 60 days, 100 days, 200 days. And I was reading this time lapse of our year, and I was thinking to myself, certainly this book, inside of this small little blue book, is the poem that has captured our moment. And then this week came. And with it came that terrible news that 6 more of our dear ones, our friends, our family, Hirsch and Eden and Carmel and Alex and Ori and Almog, that they had still been alive after 11 months in hell, still alive, waiting to be saved, and then they were murdered by Hamas a day before the IDF could bring them home. And sitting down to try and write, to try and grieve with that book still open from the week before, still on my desk, it was not that poem that spoke to me, but a classic poem, a poem from 1974, a Zelda poem, her famous poem that Jews across the world read at memorials and burials and unveilings and yizkers, the one that goes, "Each one of us has a name, given by the mountains and by our walls, by the stars and by our neighbors. Each of us has a name. L'chol ish yesh shem shnatan lo Elohim v'natnu lo avi ve'imo. L'chol ish yesh shem shnatan lo hayam v'natan lo moto." That each of us has a name given to him by God and by his parents. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by their death. And I've come to believe, this week has made it so very clear to me, that each of us, yes, has a name, and also each of us, yes, has a person that we are holding that is themselves held in Gaza. And for some, this is a very real statement. There are people who have sons and daughters and siblings and friends and parents and grandparents who have their ones and only who are gone. And for some, it is a further step, but a step still connected, still mishpacha, still a very real linkage. The son of my friend, the brother of my congregant, the neighbor's beautiful daughter, that good woman who, in my youth, lived down the road. And some of us, though we know we have nothing binding us, not directly anyways, we still feel like they are ours. The poet rabbi of my desk, Hannah Yerushalmi, shares only a last name with Eden Yerushalmi, Hashem Yakom Dama, but she still calls her my cousin. And the fate of the Bibas family is one that is a soul-deep borrowed trauma, a thing I cannot even speak about. And we Jews are intermittently grieving and celebrating as if these people were our very own. When they come home to us like Noah Argamani, to save her was not the redemption of a stranger, she is our sister. We know her, she is Noah, she's coming home to her mother miraculously, just in time to say goodbye. Or like Kaye Farhan al-Qadi, the Bedouin man who was rescued just last week, whose deliverance made us stand taller, prouder in the best of Israel. The Israel that defends all of its citizens and whose citizens defend each other. And of course, this week, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland. His face, his life, and now his death. Is it too much to say that it seems to be haunting the entirety of the English-speaking Jewish world? Sarah Tuttle Singer, a columnist at the Times of Israel, put the shock into words, quote, "I really believed it would be different. I thought Hirsch would come back. Maybe not this Shabbos, maybe not next, but soon, certainly before Elul ended, when God is in the fields, when grace is within reach. So many of us were holding Hirsch. Those of us who knew him, those of us who knew his parents, those of us who never met him, and yet still we knew him. The second gentleman of the United States of America, Doug Emhoff, described himself as gutted. I haven't been able to stop thinking about Hirsch and his parents. This is hard. I feel raw. Thousands of mourners attended Hirsch's funeral, including the president of Israel, Bougie Herzog, who said, "I apologize on behalf of the state of Israel that we failed to protect you, that we failed to bring you home safely. I stand here today as the president of the state of Israel, bidding you farewell and asking for your forgiveness from you and from your loved ones." Neither of these men who stride the world stage ever met Hirsch, and yet both feel personally the pain of his loss. As do the thousands, the tens of thousands of Israelis who are flooding the streets this week in righteous rage, demanding a release of the hostage, a deal now every single day, since the protesters, they often carry images of the captives, of the stolen, of the dead. But this week, especially this week, the faces of these six, but always in their beauty, never in their end, were seen again and again in the streets of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem throughout the nation. I do not think it is too much to say that the Jewish world is holding them, is holding him as if he was our own. And here in North America, in Canada, Jewish organizations released statements of solidarity and shock, but not only them, not just the establishment, so are our young people. I read the phrase, "We are sitting Shiva with our phones," again and again from Jewish young people on social media as the digital generation posts into the void, hoping that somehow, somewhere, their grief will find someone else equally hurt, and together they can find some kind of comfort. Shoshana Gottlieb, the satirical influencer behind Jewish Memes Only on Instagram, broke her character to share this week. She writes about her discomfort putting her grief into words. She says, "Certainly others knew him better, but she knew him the way that many people in her generation know each other, through texts, through WhatsApp, through mutual friends on social media, because she found his bar mitzvah bencher at a friend's Shabbat dinner and fell in love with the humor and the warmth and looked him up and sent him a DM. And quote, I'm just someone who posts on the internet, who happened across him by chance, but this grief, it belongs to the collective just as it belongs to the individual. Grief for our siblings who are still hostages. Grief for the pain that thousands of Israelis and Palestinians have been subjected to in almost an entire year now of meaningless war. Grief for a world before October 7th. Everyone has a name. Zelda speaks timelessly to us because we are living her words right now. This face, this smile, this name, we know. And not just him, his parents, Rachel and John, now we know them too. Some of us know them literally, some only from having watched them in their strength and their courage, fighting every day to make sure that we never forgot, not even for a moment, that their son was taken and that he was still alive and that he still needed us. And they strode in front of world leaders on huge crowds and small gatherings at friendly places, hostile places. They bore an unbearable weight. God, please give them strength. They need it now more than ever. Noam Tzion of the Hartman Institute was one of the thousands to attend the Shiva in the days following Hirsch's burial. And after speaking with John, Hirsch's father, he learned that one of the small points of comfort the family is taking is in the invitations they have received. the Zoom invites from strangers to show up to a bris in North America, where a new baby, conceived and born in the time since their son was stolen, is now being brought into the covenant, graced to receive a name that will bring them forth to Torah and chuppah and ma'asim tovim. And what is that name? Again and again, the name that baby has received is Hirsch. We know his name, the one given to him by his parents and by God and by Smile. And yes, we know the name that was given to him by his death. And our tradition is so clear. Mourning is a process and a journey. There is no magic turn of phrase. There is no perfect answer to the unanswerable question of grief, of loss. But there is strength in the rhythm and the unity and the anchoring of our tradition, of Shiva, of Kaddish. And it is in that spirit that my teacher, Rabbi David Levinkros, writes, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, Hirsch, be'alma divrach Yerutei, Carmel, v'yimlich malchutei, Eden, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayidechol Beit Yisrael, Alex, ba'agalau v'zman kariv, Uri, v'imru amen, Almak. We have embedded the names of the hostages killed into Kaddish to show that their deaths and our tears have saturated into our prayer. But Kaddish is not only that, it is an affirmation of our very existence, that we are still alive. And we must learn to celebrate the blessing of these 6 short lives. And we must be like a mourner who, at the moment that they haltingly leave their home, once again says, Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach leolam olamei almaya. For sometimes that is all that can be said.
Lai la lai, la la la. La 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 la
As we prepare for Aleinu, each of us is like a mourner. So may we find the strength to care for each other as we care for the mourner. May we uphold each other as we uphold the mourner. May we shield each other as we shield the mourner. And may we all be consoled amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.